Welcome to Czyz Adventures. It's all about giving you the beauty of the places that we go to, but also the planning process or the information that you might need if it's something that you are thinking about doing too. Next big adventure is going to be the Tour du Mont Blanc in 2025. So I am in the middle of planning for that, and I thought now would be a good time to kind of give you an update on how that planning process is going, and maybe it'll help somebody out there putting similar plans together. So I've learned a lot in the last month, and I have to say it's been a little frustrating initially, but I'm finally feeling like I've connected with the right resources that I can actually make this happen. In this video, I'm going to kind of cover what some of those decisions are that you need to make up front. Before I get into the details of what that planning process is looking like, for me at least, I want to make sure you understand I'm not an expert. The plan is to do this self-guided without having to pay a company to put the itinerary together for us or to set up the accommodations. So the idea is that I am going to make this happen on our own with the resources that are available to us. If you're not familiar with what the Tour du Mont Blanc is, it's a long distance hike. It's 105 miles or about 170 kilometers that goes through 3 countries in France, Italy, and Switzerland. So it makes a loop around this massive, which is basically a group of mountains that are together, but the biggest being the Mont Blanc. This is considered a difficult hike in that it is long distance and you are going up and down quite a few bits of elevation. And I apologize up front if I butcher any of the names of the places that I will see or that we will see along the way, because I do not know French, Italian, or the Swiss language. So I do know a little German, but that's not going to get us by. So this Tour du Mont Blanc is very famous. It is not a trip that you're going to find a lot of solitude on. There's going to be a lot of people around. So as long as you're good for that, then this trip should be amazing as far as the scenery goes. There's going to be glaciers, there's going to be mountain passes, there'll be rivers and meadows and valleys. Who knows what the weather's going to be like, because it will be up in the mountains. I think the highest point is going to be about 8,300 feet, maybe just under 8,400 feet. So I'm hoping I won't have any issues with the altitude, but I will bring some medication just in case. So, let's get into what some of those decisions are that you have to make up front before you really get into the details of the planning. The first being, where is it that you're going to start and how are you going to get there? For me, I am going to be flying in to Geneva, Switzerland. Some people who are already over there might be able to take a train to get to their starting point, or maybe even a bus. But most people will be flying in to Geneva. There are basically 4 main places you can start on the trail, although you can start pretty much anywhere. It is a loop. A lot of people start in Luggage. That's the official starting point of the trail. And I apologize again if I'm not saying it correctly. The other places you could start in are Accommodation, that's also in France, or you could do Courmayeur, which is in Italy, or you can start on the northern part, which is in Switzerland at Champagne or Champex. So those are some of the key places that a lot of the people start. And we're going to fly into Switzerland in Geneva. We're going to take a bus, most likely, from there to Chamonix. We're going to spend a night and make sure that our luggage arrives and there's no key issues. And then we're going to take a bus or a train down to Houches to begin the trail. So that's how we're going to start. The other thing to think about is what direction you want to go. 90% of the people go in a counterclockwise direction. but you can go clockwise. Most of the reasons for going counterclockwise is because you're not hit early on with this steep climb. But again, you can go in any direction you feel like. The other thing to think about is what type of accommodations you want to stay in. There are 3 main things you can do. You can stay in refuges or refugios if you're in Italy. Again, I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but they're kind of like hostels. Most of them have dorms that you would stay in, but there are some that have private rooms. And pretty much all of them have what they call half board, which is where you pay a certain amount of money and you're there for dinner as well as breakfast. The other is you want to stay at hotels, or maybe you want a combination of things. And another thing that you could do is camping. So we've decided early on that we're going to go counterclockwise, and the type of accommodations we would prefer are not dorm style. So we're looking at this as more of a vacation. We would like to very much have sleep at night without the snorers, and if we can have single room accommodations if we are going to stay at a refuge. The issue that you run into is because this is a popular trail, you do have to get your reservations in early. So you're competing with all those companies that are getting accommodations for people. So this is where I find that I might run into some trouble by not getting somebody to do this for us. But I won't know that for another month pretty much. A lot of the refuges are closing for the season. Most of them are closed by mid-September and won't reopen again until June of next year. So when they start taking reservations for 2025 is a bit of a mystery. It's not on any of the websites that I can find. I did send a email to Refuge Bonatti, and they did respond that they will be open for reservations in mid-October. So you have that many months in advance that you have to start planning to get your accommodations. If there's any advice I can give you, it is to plan early if you want to get those accommodations, especially if you're not camping. The downsides to camping is that I can't remember whether it's Switzerland or Italy, but one of those, you have difficulty wild camping, and a lot of times you have to stay at campgrounds if they have them. So you're a little bit more limited. Although it can be done, it's just going to be a little bit more involved. So our plan is to enjoy ourselves, to have a little bit of luxury. So if we can do a hotel in a room that's got a shower and a flush toilet, that would be the way we want to go. If we have to stay in a refuge, again, it would be best if it was a separate room, if we didn't stay in a dorm. And if you didn't have to share the shower or toilet facilities. So that's rare in refugios or refuges. So we'll see how that goes. I've been looking at places, and that's the next big planning part that I have to do. The other thing you have to think about is what your capabilities are. How many miles a day do you want to do? Do you want to speed this thing through and just hit the highlights with a 7-day hike? Or do you want to take your time, soak everything in, take a rest day along the way, and just have some basic average miles of maybe 10 to 12 miles a day? So I know a lot of people will finish the trail within 10 days, and there are itineraries out there that give you an 11-day itinerary, but they don't include any rest days. So what we're leaning towards is a 12-day start to finish itinerary. And that's what I'm going to go with right now. We'll average, some days we'll do 10 miles, some days just under, some days a little bit more. But we'll see. It really depends on what kind of accommodations I get as to how many miles we're going to have to end up doing for that day. I have some areas that I want to make sure I get, and if I can't get it, then I'm going to have to come up with some other plans. The other thing you have to decide early on is if you're going to use public transportation in any way, or are you going to do every mile, or will you utilize public transportation if the weather goes bad, or if somebody has an injury or is tired for that day. What would you do? You'll have to do a little bit more planning if you do want to use public transportation, so you at least know what's available and what you can and can't do. We are not necessarily purists. I would like to do as many miles on the trail as we can, but for example, out of Houches, there is a cable car called the Bellevue that will take you up to the variant that it drops you off on, but it saves a rather dull uphill climb, and you'll save quite a bit of mileage and elevation change. So we are planning on taking that cable car so that we can make it all the way to Le Contamines or past for our first day. The other thing is if you're going to use a luggage transport in any way, so that'll play into how much you can take over with you and how much you're going to have to carry, and whether or not you can stay in certain refuges or refugios, because not all of them are accessible by road. So that all comes into play. Knowing when you're going to go is another decision point. It plays into what accommodations you are actually going to be able to get, and if you're flexible enough, you might be able to move your dates around if there's a problem with one of the accommodations. So knowing when you're going and how flexible you are is another decision point. So I'd say those are the main decisions you have to make up front. If you hadn't made those yet, you might want to get on it, because you're going to want to start making your reservations very soon. Now, what resources have I found to help me along the way? Watch my next video for the resources that I found to be very helpful in planning out this trip.